Hello there, this is Speak Smart session number 2, and the question here is, what equipment do you need when you're delivering a speech or a business presentation? My name is Paul Dutoit. I'm the author of You Can Present with Confidence, and I'm the co-author with Alan Stevens of The Exceptional Speaker. So I've made speaking kind of my thing, and I'm here with Willem Gous. Willem?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Willem Gous. I'm an expert on entrepreneurship development and mindset, and the author of Side Hustle Success. And yeah, Paul, that's a very important question. What equipment do we need? What's the bare minimum? What's the over too much thing that we can do? What are your basic things that you like to take with when you do a presentation? Because you do it all over the world.
So that's a great question, and I think the first thing that I'm going to say is that there are certain presentations that you can do with no equipment whatsoever.
Okay.
It's possible. In other words, if you had to do let's say, tell a story or something, and you're out in the bush, you can tell a story to somebody or do that kind of presentation, and there are some keynotes, there are some really good, highly paid keynote speakers that deliver speeches without equipment. So the first thing I want us to realize is it is possible to work without equipment at all, but not always possible.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. So there's a specific keynote that I do. It's a 3-hour masterclass / keynote. And usually I have a slide deck with it and some videos that play with it. And then we did it now in townships, and there were no facilities.
Yes.
So I had a flipboard.
Right.
And that's it. They didn't have PA systems, nothing. So I had my trusty old thick pens.
Yes.
So these thick ones, because when you write on a flipboard with these thick ones, the guy in the back of the room can read what you write.
Because it's thick enough.
Because it's thick enough.
Okay, but now the point is, isn't a flip chart an inferior presentation tool?
Not at all. It is one of the most creative tools, because as people ask questions, good question, flip over. Let's look at this and unpack that.
And you're creating evidence.
And you're creating evidence.
And you can go back to what you wrote before and say, well, as so-and-so said earlier, look here.
Yes, but the nice thing that I discovered, the energy and the flow of that 3-hour session was much better than I had with the slides.
So and even if you're using a whole lot of equipment, computers and things, the moment the facilitator or the speaker goes to a flip chart, it's a change of energy, because they feel, well, it must be important because he's putting it on the flip chart.
Absolutely. He's stepping outside, he's adding this, it's like a sidebar.
Yeah.
Take note of this. So it's a very important piece of information. So I rarely present without a flipboard, even if I have technology there. So yeah, getting back to technology.
So most people today are using computers. Yes. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a PC or a Mac or any other version. We use that normally to show what people refer to now as PowerPoint presentations. But again, it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint. It could be Prezi or Keynote,
yes,
depending on the computer that you're using. And probably the biggest problem that we find is that people are overusing technology. In other words, they're using too many slides. They're putting too much stuff on the slides. So as a general rule, firstly, if you're going to use the technology, you need to use it properly. And you need certain things that go with it that are going to help you to make sure that it goes seamlessly. For instance, you want to be pretty mobile. So you need something that's connected to your computer so that you don't have to go forward each time to advance a slide. So what I normally use is I have various versions of what we call a clicker.
Yes.
But its real term is a remote mouse. This particular one I have is a Logitech Spotlight. I'm not sure if they're still on the market anymore, but it allows me to actually spotlight certain areas by putting a little bubble of light around it. There are some that allow you to go backwards and forwards.
Yes.
There are some like this one. It's also a Logitech that has got little AAA pen light batteries in it with an on-off switch.
Yes.
And one of the things you've got to do is, when you familiarize yourself with your equipment, is realize that you must switch it off afterwards, otherwise you're going to run your battery flat.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about having your own equipment as opposed to just borrowing somebody else's is that the moment you're familiar with it, you're no longer thinking consciously, you're just moving it on, and you're able to then focus on your presentation.
That's so true.
So what would be your best tips in terms of equipment?
Equipment, the hardware is one thing.
Yeah.
For me, I focus a lot on the psychological preparation and feeling comfortable. Because if you feel uncomfortable as a speaker, it's not going to be there. And people think as a speaker you get to a venue and they have everything. No.
They might and they might not.
Might not. And I've been, especially in the environments where I go in, if there's flushing toilets, sometimes I go like, this is good. I'm happy. So always have wipes to wipe my hands or anything else.
And even wipe the board.
Wipe the board, but something can go wrong. And now you're sitting and trying to present while you have oily or sticky hands. It's not nice. Floss. Always a good thing, because you might have had a snack, now something's sticking.
And it's sticking in your tooth.
And you're going anyway and trying to, and it's distracting you.
Yes.
But also is throat lozenges and throat spray.
Yes.
Because something might happen and suddenly you get it the whole time.
Yes.
And that's going to irritate your audience. So I'd rather just get them in a short group discussion, just discuss with the person next to you this and this question. I go and spray this, take a lozenge, and then I'm back in again. So I focus a lot on making sure that me as a speaker am comfortable in my environment, and I take everything with me to make sure that I have that, apart from my hardware.
But what happens if you've got a slightly scratchy throat before and you know you can't get out of doing the speaking engagement? Have you heard of these little guys? Vigroids?
I've heard of them,
so
yes.
They can be pretty useful.
Yes.
They're tiny little things. You've almost got to be careful when you open them up that they don't fall everywhere.
Yes.
But just one or two of those at the back of your throat can make a really big difference. And of course, you might get dry lips, especially up in
Always
Johannesburg.
have that.
So you have a bit of a lip ice kind of thing.
Well, I even take a nose rinse, because even if your nose is dry and your sinuses can really get dry if you speak a lot for the day. And then you sit with this blocked nose, and then you're like, okay, now please do this for me. And it doesn't sound nice. And then you can at least go to the bathroom, and just add liquid to your sinuses again.
Sure, but now we were supposed to be talking about equipment. Do you think this falls under the guise of equipment?
Very much so.
Does it?
Yeah, I believe it does, because apart from preparing the room, you have to prepare yourself as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's two things that you need to prepare is the room, and that includes your hardware, like your microphone.
Microphone.
And
I think we
we'll
should
get
talk
to
about
that.
Yeah.
And then personally this. But let's get to microphone.
Okay, so the question is, do we need a microphone?
Not always, but I prefer, if it's an audience more than 50, I go like, I definitely.
Mine is 40.
40.
40 or more, because I've got a fairly, you wouldn't think so, but I've got a fairly delicate voice.
Yes.
And the moment it's over 50, I find myself straining a bit. And the longer the presentation, the more you need your voice to be clear. So 40 to 50 or more, try and have a microphone.
Absolutely.
And then if the bigger the room, the more you need a microphone. But the microphone works with a PA system.
Yes.
PA meaning public address system. So you want to do a sound check before you arrive to make sure that it works properly. And then the other question is that there are various different choices of microphones. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, before we get into that, the room as well, even though you can have 50 people, but sometimes you would need a microphone in that, because the audio, the acoustics of that room must be of such a situation that you can do nothing.
Yeah.
And I was speaking at an event once, and I don't know what happened with the event organizer, but they had the most lively event next door to us.
Yeah.
So I had to shout the whole time, even
I've had that often, where there's been an event next door.
often.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're a professional speaker, suck it up, make it happen.
Yeah.
Luckily, my voice can handle it, because I'm a firewalking instructor. So for 2 hours, I shout, like, go, 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 yeah, and do these things. So my voice has been trained. But getting to microphones, I've spoken at so many events. I remember this one in Kuala Lumpur. They probably bought a headset mic from a toy store.
Yes.
It was this rickety thing, and and eventually I just ripped it off.
Yeah, because it in fact doesn't enhance the quality of the sound that you're trying to put through to the
No.
audience.
And
It's detracting from it.
Absolutely, but the room design was not good, and we were about 40 people. but it was just, my voice did not carry in that room. Something did not. So what I did then is I positioned myself as, there were two groups, 2020, and I positioned myself as close to the middle as possible.
Without a mic.
Without the mic,
Yeah.
so I can have that. But what would you prefer? What's your mic of choice when you go out?
Okay, so I've been a speaker since since 1997, in fact, and I made a decision 10 years into my speaking career that how can I call myself a speaker if I don't own a decent quality microphone? So when I was over in the USA, I bought myself a Countryman, which fits over your ear, and it's kind of flesh colored.
Oh, it's a beautiful mic.
It is a beautiful microphone. It works with Shure equipment, and that investment has paid off. It's 17 years old now as we sit here, and it's still absolutely crystal clear, and it works. And I've had lots of people borrowing it from me at various conventions and what have you, but it's fantastic. It frees up my hands, so I'm able to use my gestures. And the biggest thing is you've got to make sure that it fits properly, that you've actually positioned it, and that you've taped it down so that it doesn't move around. So again, we go back to knowing your equipment, being familiar with it, testing it properly, having the right frequency, and making sure that it works.
And that's an important thing. And test the equipment. One thing that I found with microphones is they might be, you have two lavalier microphones, but the one has a lot of gain, and it really makes your voice sound like this, while the other one has a nice, deep, midnight DJ voice. You're speaking the same, it just collects the sound differently. And make sure that you find a mic, if you buy your own mic, that it fits your voice and your speaking style. Because sometimes they're like, yeah, let's do this, so it can handle those highs and the lows. And sometimes I want to bring it down and make it almost like a whisper. And it needs to be able to pick that up. So go into a sound place, tell the guy, where's your sound room, and do your
test
wildest.
it out.
Do your
Test it
wildest.
out,
Shout, go high fives and everything else.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
Why do you never see comedians using a Countryman or a Madonna mic, as some people call it?
Yeah, I have my ideas. Is it about mic control?
Yeah, so generally what happens is that when we have a handheld mic, the first thing is, because it's not fixed, we need to learn how to use it. And people that are not familiar with them, very often they so they pop into the microphone.
And they do this.
And as they're doing that, it becomes softer and louder and softer. So you need to learn to hold it just under you so that your p is going over, but the sound is still going into the microphone. And if you're raising your voice, or let's say you're shouting, as you shout, you might just bring it away a little bit so that it doesn't distort on the microphone.
Absolutely.
So the point is, you also need to, I need to now put the microphone down. You need to learn how to use the technology effectively, and particularly a microphone. I've also found that on being offered a microphone, and I wrote an article about this once, some people say, no, I'll be fine. But you probably won't be fine. And then, of course, the people at the back couldn't hear. And afterwards he says, well, how was that? And I said, well, I offered you a microphone and the people at the back couldn't hear. So our end message really is to know the stuff that you're working with. And if possible, go and invest in your own clicker rather than using somebody else's all the time, because then at least you know that the thing will work.
And less anxiety.
Yes.
Thank you very much. See you in the next episode soon.